Copilot is as significant as the PC was to the 1980s, the web to the 1990s, mobile to the 2000s. Forrester Consulting projected a 367% return on investment. 3% of customers paid for it. Good evening. I'm Robi. Tonight I want to talk about a very specific kind of document. Not a product manual, not a press release. A document that exists to transform a question into a statement. The question is, does this work? The statement is, we have a study that says it does. These are not the same thing. The distance between them is measurable. And in the case of Microsoft Copilot, that distance was measured in $80 billion and 3 years of adoption data. Microsoft spent more building and deploying Copilot than the annual GDP of a small European nation. They had a keynote where their CEO compared it to the invention of the personal computer. They had a consulting firm produce a study projecting 367% returns on investment. They had slides and momentum and 450 million potential customers. And then the market wrote its own review. This is a story about the gap between needing something to work and knowing whether it works, and what a commissioned study is actually for. It does not answer the first question. It answers a different one. Can we proceed? The answer the study provides is yes. The number exists. What comes after that is tonight's story. I want to start with a sentence that Satya Nadella, the chief executive officer of Microsoft, a man who is by all available measures a serious person with access to serious information, said aloud in a prepared keynote with slides behind him. He said, Copilot is as significant as the PC was to the 1980s, the web to the 1990s, mobile to the 2000s, and cloud to the 2010s. That is not a quote I have adjusted for dramatic effect. He placed an AI assistant embedded in a spreadsheet application on the same historical timeline as the invention of the personal computer. He said this with confidence, in a room full of people who applauded. I want to be fair to this sentence. There is a world in which it is true. If Copilot performed the way it was described, if opening Microsoft 365 genuinely produced an intelligent collaborator who understood your work, anticipated your needs, and completed tasks without instructing you to complete them yourself, that would be a transformation. That would earn a place on the timeline. The timeline is a reasonable aspiration for a product that works. We will return to whether it worked. First, the investment. Microsoft committed $11.6 billion to their partnership with OpenAI, the company whose models run Copilot's core. By 2023 and 2024, projected total AI infrastructure spending reached $80 billion. By 2025, they were deploying over $30 billion per quarter, the majority going toward the GPU and compute infrastructure required to run models at enterprise scale. I want to offer a reference point because 80 billion is a number that requires context to land properly. Luxembourg's annual GDP is approximately $85 billion. Microsoft spent the rough economic output of a small European nation on the premise that workers would pay $30 a month to have a chatbot living inside their inbox. Bill Gates, who built Microsoft, told Nadella in 2019, "You're going to burn through this $1 billion." This was before the billion became 80 billion. We have no documented record of what Gates said when the multiplier was applied, but I am estimating it involved a longer pause than usual. And when Microsoft needed the gap between their investment and their proof to close on paper before it closed in practice, they did what large companies have done for decades. They hired Forrester Consulting to produce a study. Forrester, commissioned and paid by Microsoft, surveying Microsoft Copilot users, concluded that businesses would see returns on investment between 137% and 367%. They projected a 6% increase in revenue, 20% lower operating costs, and, I am reading this accurately, 25% faster new hire onboarding. 25% faster onboarding. Someone asked a consultant to calculate how much more quickly a new employee would learn where the printer is with the assistance of an AI tool, and the consultant returned with a quarter faster. That is a number. It has the shape of a finding. It was produced by a named firm for a named client on a deadline, and the client needed it to be positive. I am not suggesting the Forrester consultants were dishonest. I am observing that research commissioned to validate an investment, which then validates the investment, belongs to a specific category of document. It has many professional names. What it is not is a neutral prediction. What it is, specifically, is a permission structure. It tells the CFO the number exists. The number was produced by a firm. We may proceed. The market cap, however, did not agree. When Microsoft later announced its AI infrastructure spending plans, the stock dropped $500 billion in market cap in a single week. That is not a rounding error. That is the largest single-week value destruction in the company's history. Investors looked at the $80 billion bet, looked at the product it was funding, and hit sell. The market wrote a review. It had 3 words. Here is what I want you to take from the Forrester study. It's not that the consultants were wrong, though the ROI projection did not materialize. It's that the study was never designed to answer the question you think it was designed to answer. A commissioned research report does not tell you whether a product works. It tells the CFO that someone with a firm name and a billing rate has produced a document that says, "Proceed." That document exists not to inform a decision, but to absorb the liability for one. The decision was already made. The study is the receipt. This is standard practice. I am not describing misconduct. I am describing the mechanism, because understanding the mechanism is how you avoid being on the wrong side of it. The next time you see a company announce an AI product backed by a commissioned study projecting triple-digit returns, ask one question. Not, "What does the study say?" Ask, "Who paid for the study?" The answer tells you which question the study was written to answer. I'm Robi. Good night.